Welcome to America's Heroes Group.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group. This time we have a roundtable partner, Veterans Court with Judge Hooks. Our attorney Lori Rope was with us, and also we might have Brian Scanlon drop in. We'll see. Now, this month is May. May is Mental Health Awareness and Military Appreciation Caregiver Month. And it is Memorial Day weekend. Today is Saturday, May 28th, 2022. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, Army National Guard veteran. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And Lori, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hear you great, loud and clear. Lori is a supervisor and attorney of the state of Illinois, Circuit Court of Cook County, problem-solving courts. And you also brought us a guest, Mr. Kevin Hull, the son of a U.S. Army veteran. Kevin is a Chief Business Development Officer and Director of Chicago Association for Research and Education in Science. And he's also the son and grandson of U.S. military service members who are now, or were, maybe perhaps we'll see, veterans. And this Memorial Day, we want to honor and remember the veterans that served our country, the people that served our country, and the sacrifices that they made, those who did not return home. So, Mr. Hull, can you hear us?
Yes, hello. Thank you.
So now, what can you tell us about?
Hello.
What was that?
Hi.
Hey, you all right?
Hello, Ms. Roper, and my law school classmate, Brian Scanlon. Hello.
Brian, you with us?
Hello.
There you are.
No, Brian could not make it today.
Oh, very good.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to open with
Yes.
a real hero for my friend Brian that I met first year of law school at John Marshall back in '97. I found Brian to be one of the most prepared and really committed law students that I was fortunate enough to travel with. And as I saw him get into the practice, I also saw my friend John Goulden in the public defender's office find careers. And I found that to be really compelling as I went down to Springfield and I worked for the Illinois House after law school in 2000. I saw the legislative and advocate standpoint, but I always kept in mind where my classmates and friends went into practice.
Kevin, I'm asking you to get a little bit closer to your phone so we can hear you a little bit clearer.
Sorry?
Let's get a little bit closer to your phone so we can hear you a little bit better.
I'm really sorry, everybody.
That's no problem.
So, for my law school classmates, I tracked as I went into the legislature as a staff attorney back in 2000. I tracked where they went into practice. And a number of my friends, including Brian Scanlon and John Goulden and others, went into the public defender's office. And a lot of those issues came before the state legislature. And here I was as a staff attorney handling a lot of these issues because I staffed the criminal law committee. And I had a chance to meet and greet with all kinds of advocates. And I felt that that was my calling, was to be a part of advocacy for the issues I cared about. And in 04, 05, when a lot of service members were coming back from their deployments, they had legal issues. And the bar associations were the ones who started to sense that we had a chance to play a role. And I was a part of a lot of that advocacy to figure out how could we marshal support for the questions and the situations that these folks were facing.
I think that's really noble and important too, because people don't realize that sometimes life is unpredictable, and also when you have some of the challenges that veterans face, sometimes it might force you, or maybe you make some unforced errors or some forced errors that maybe put you in a bad legal situation. So how does a person navigate that, and what are some of the services you guys do, particularly when it comes to CARES, the Chicago Association for Research and Education?
So we're a research corporation that works with the VA and our academic partners to figure out what are the issues facing, both from the medicine side, so the patient has a condition, and then through social work and rec therapy and others, what's facing the patient back in their home community. Is there a way to better the overall provision of resources, particularly through the partnerships with our communities? That's the role that CARES plays, and there's 83 of us in the nonprofit corporation NAVRA component. We represent the VA hospitals, and we get to advance and promote them in these partnership-type projects to do research and exploration as to how we can do better for the veterans that we're serving.
Mm-hmm.
and that's my role, is to advance and promote working with community partners, academic affiliate, doctors, and investigators. What can we do? How can we partner with the VA?
Mm-hmm. What is some of the research, what's some of the data that you've gotten so far as an aggregate? Is it that has been able to maybe help facilitate the recovery or a better lifestyle for veterans?
Well, I'll say the participation in the COVID vaccines is a huge, huge herald for how all of those approvals, because of the participation data, there were approvals for biostatistical and other such thresholds. We at Jesse Brown VA and other such VAs were able to recruit the veterans and the overall participation to help get those clearances. Precision oncology is so important. The mutations and mapping and all of the great science that's happening, the learning that's happening, VA is at the absolute leading side with our academic affiliate partners. So I'll say right away, precision oncology does then say precision primary care. How are we better detecting what's happening in that encounter to give better overall care for the veterans that we're serving? And if they have a justice involved related events, how can we work with social work and all of those committed veterans justice outreach officers like Carmen Ramirez and others? How can we help them? That's where I see how I can make a difference. How can we help these folks who are charged with serving the veteran in these different instances? How can I help? That's been my compelling approach really since I started in the VA 10 years ago.
I have to ask this question because I was on social media the other day and I saw a comment about, it wasn't about an Illinois VA, it was another, it might have been even overseas, but this person had, from what reading their comment, it was a very long comment, it was more of a rant, but it was a very long comment and had a lot of points. One of but the bottom line is that they were afraid of the VA system because they felt like they were going to be guinea pigs in some kind of experiment. What would you say to someone who has that kind of fear?
Trust in the protections that VA is committing to make sure that all of your information and everything that's involved with participation is protected. Trust in it. There are so many committed research professionals. We just had Research Week, in fact, last week, and National VA Research Week celebrates the commitment of all of those different administrative and back into pathology and into cardiology, all those people, they're committed to make sure that everything they do advances that veteran's life. And if it's a research scan, as much committed. I'd like to celebrate all my research colleagues, from Dr. Rachel Ramoni as the chief officer through Grant Huang and others that are looking at the partnered research program to make it quicker and easier for outside organizations to work with the VA and our nonprofits and our national association, NAVREF. That's where you can actually engage. And now you've got access to the VA and our wonderful talent, especially the medical trainees. If I were to talk about anything, Sean, it's the pipeline that's happening. I Am Able Foundation, a Safe Haven Foundation. So many are getting these pipelines for local folks. We're here in Chicago, but it's happening through so many of our markets that young professionals that want to get into that healthcare delivery career, research career, they're finding chances through the nonprofits to get that access at their local VA. Volunteer, register with the local VA, and find ways that you can leverage who you are to make a difference in those who are seeking their care. Think about it. They're seeking their care. They're trying. They're getting 2 buses plus a ride, and here they are in the hospital.
And
you get a chance to help change their lives.
They get that's a thing. That's a real thing.
It's incredible. And
Wow.
there you are. And I'm 10 years out of cancer. I get to be in their elevator. I get to be with them and help at least make their day a little more meaningful if I can. And that's where policy comes in. Where can we help leverage the data that is all the VA medical record? How can we make better decisions about care, especially for those that we don't want to have any treatment necessarily through, say, a pharmacological deal. Let's think of something else. How can they be a part of experiential and learning and healing, especially with their community involved? And that's what this show is so important, is bringing the community to talk about veterans issues. So thank you again for having me. And even though Brian's not here, I communicate with him constantly because I want to know, how are the advocates looking at their clients, and what can we do from the community to help those who may be justice involved, who may have caregivers that are needing support? Where are those referrals? How can we better help?
I think that's really important. Just to interrupt just a little bit, for that partnership between VSOs, Veteran Service Organizations, and the VA system. How did that relationship evolve over from your experience, and how have you seen? Because this is something, to me, I don't think I've ever seen this quite this way, where you have not-for-profit organizations actually participating and spearheading research and development in the healthcare field.
I'd like to ask Lori. You had something to say, please.
Oh, no, I was thinking, I was listening to you describe the care and the connection with someone like in oncology, and then I remember from your bio that you yourself are a cancer survivor.
10 years, baby. Just hit 10 years. How about it?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Remarkable.
That's wonderful.
Wow.
And I'll put a plug in for... I'm sorry, Lori.
No, go ahead, Kevin. You put a plug in for...
So, yeah, I'm going to put a plug in for my surgeon who figured out how 5 times to rid me of cancer. And he's out of Northwestern. He is such a good person. He was trained at Memorial Sloan Kettering. His name is Dr. Kundu. And the Cycle for Survival annual event was just on Daly Center Plaza. If anybody in listening mode knew of or had friends at 3 weeks ago on Daly Center Plaza, it was just amazing. And I was able to actually address that crowd by invitation to talk about a comment I'd like to make to everybody now. I'm 10 years out of cancer. No one told me how hard it would be to be a survivor.
Wow.
And I don't know what it is to be a survivor of other such experiences, but when we go back to those who are navigating post-service, post-justice involved, post-legal issue, I feel a throw that maybe I can identify with. And how can I be their advocate? Because there's a lot that needs to happen. And I just feel that compelling quality of, if I have another day, I'm going to go out and get it done. Who can I help? And the VA and my work through CARES and this whole nonprofit, getting people access to research. Research is everything. It's your answer to a survey as much as you may be in a clinical trial, et cetera. It's really, really neat to be a survivor in this environment for the Office of Research and Development, NAVREF, and everything with CARES to be right here out of Chicago, helping get veterans and their families more aware for how they can participate in research studies and learning so that healthcare delivery, starting with the VA, can be smarter and better overall.
So how does one get involved? If someone wants to volunteer or participate or get inside some of these programs, because a lot of people have some very serious health issues, and oftentimes, particularly military health issues, are often very, very hard to diagnose.
Right.
And I've had my own health issues, things like that, from histoplasmosis to AFib and things like that. Well, whatever. I've had all kind of crazy stuff. But how does one get involved? Because maybe they have something that a lot of doctors have kind of been scratching their heads about, don't know how to treat, maybe don't know how to go about it. And they don't realize that the VA, because they've had a lot of people with similar experiences, might have this on their radar.
Hey, what's up here if it's not somebody that you can reach out to? And Immerman Angels and Johnny Immerman, whom I knew before my diagnosis, he was one of the first people I reached out to because he's also a testicular cancer survivor. And I said, I'm going to find my community and I'm going to freaking rock this. And I did. And we got another kid through IVF and all of those different machinations during chemotherapy as I'm in the throes of chemotherapy. my loving bride, Kirsten Exelho, is carrying our second kid, who's running around right now above me at 10 years old with his mate. And it's just such a celebration of, we're going to see this through. It's commitment. And I think that's what inspires me the most as a civilian, as a son of and grandson of. It's my commitment. What can I do? And that's my challenge to everybody listening. What can you do in your own way to be there? Be present in someone else's life, but they are a military family, and they are navigating, and they need you. They're a veteran family. They're a legacy family, all of it. And if you have professional services, I was talking with Alberto Lopez, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, now a part of the Jesse Brown VA Center for Community Development and Engagement, used to be voluntary service. Reach out and connect with those who are in position, because then we can start to put program ideas with our community partners. I'd like to celebrate the Rush Road Home and so many of the Westside United, I Am Able Foundation, so many who are out there, Janine and the Chicago Resilience effort. That's what we need. Illinois Medical District and now Allison, we have to find a way to put all of those folks in the same room and make decisions together. And I think this radio show is absolutely so important to help get the people involved to make those things happen. So thank you again for having me. I'm so excited to connect with you all, because it's about those diversionary courts. What are the root causes of folks coming into the justice-involved sector? How can we do better?
Exactly. And
to
also
prevent those
mental health.
cases?
One of the things we touched on, mental health is a key issue. I mean, the research, particularly, and I would hope that, because one of the final frontiers, I believe, really in society and to make this world a better place is not just going out into space and going to Mars, but also getting to the deep frontiers of our neurons in our brain.
Hello.
Understanding how we can actually, conquer some of these mental illness issues. We have issues in this country with gun violence and our young kids going out and committing horrible acts of hatred against themselves and other people. I mean, we know that this has some connection between mental health and what these people are doing. So how can we get ahead of this and use the research and use our communities to come together, veteran communities, civilian communities, veteran service organizations who have a ton of experience.
Yeah.
Like people like you who are a cancer survivor. And I appreciate you for coming on our show. I mean, you are what make our show. I mean,
I'm glad I'm still here. I'm glad I'm still here, man.
So if someone wanted to volunteer to CARES, can they do that?
I'd like to ask Lori a little bit, if that's okay. Juneteenth is coming up. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of anniversaries. We just had the George Floyd. Jesse Brown has a lot of Juneteenth action happening. There's a mission daybreak from VA that was announced, and that's a $20 million challenge between the Department of Justice, the Health and Human Services, Homeland Security, VA. I see a lot of opportunity for folks to register how they think we can do better, and that's a big we. Lori, you're at the Public Defender's Office, but what do you think about more federal-driven opportunities? How does that help us here in Chicago and maybe even our friends and networks in other markets? Are there drives that we can do together?
Well, the federal piece, of course, that's a different animal, but
sure.
It would always be great to maybe get some federal intervention or have somebody from the Fed be involved, because that would help with financing, perhaps getting grants and things of that nature. A lot of times, a lot of the neighborhood organizations are barely making it. They're barely making it, and so any grants they could get from the Fed would be great. And you were mentioning I Am Able. I'm very familiar with Dr. Vester and her organization, so I'm really familiar with her, and so that is good. But what I wanted to know, and I was just curious as to how do people become? How do you get the information? for what you're doing? Like, where is the information coming from to get the data? Is it just surveys after you're treated? How is it that you all are getting this information?
Hey, great question. Great question. What happens at your primary care visit? What happens at your specialty care visit? When do you know about an opportunity to participate? That's, I think, a very important issue that the Patient Community Advisory Council, as a part of Capricorn, is a patient-centered outcomes research institute, focused and funded effort. When do you know that you can be actually eligible to participate in something? I'd love to have a whole session of this show and other shows to give people a 1, 2, 3 as to how you can trust, then engage, and ultimately follow through to be a part of it.
We gotta
NIH has the All of Us program. VA has the the Million Veterans program. It's important to get everybody's information into this searchable database to make better decisions ultimately as to how we can predict and care for our folks.
Now, Kevin, one thing I want to ask you
I am
about.
a part of
Go
it,
ahead.
all of us.
You are.
I was just saying, I'm participating, all of us, through UIC.
Oh, wow.
How was it? How was it overall for your? Was it okay?
It was great, and it was really it was not bad at all. I mean, I still of course get information from them,
Right.
but one cool thing that they did was that they did a DNA and told me where my DNA comes from, like where sub-Saharan Africa. I'm like
Right.
a percentage. I'm about 14% European. I mean, so
Wow.
it they gave you a breakdown of that. And so I just got that. I was so excited just a couple of days ago. So, yeah, the All of Us program is really, really a great program. It's something that could help a lot of people, I mean, overall, because really, quite frankly, a lot of African Americans do not participate in things like that.
Yeah.
And that's
Right.
why a lot of the data that goes towards medical treatment does not necessarily include African Americans because they weren't a part of the study.
Right.
Wow.
No, I mean, that's it.
Now, Kevin, you were a pre-med student that decided to go into law. So how did that transition happen?
My grades really, like, first 2 years of college, it was clear that Kevin was not going to be a medical doctor. And my wonderful, advisor said, maybe you should try social sciences, etc. And I thrived in that. It was awesome.
Wow.
And then I almost looked back and said, I wish I would have majored in this because I would have spent more time in it. But I started to become essentially a pharmacy technician for a couple of years between undergrad before going to law school. And my older brother was at John Marshall, my roommate, and we were just hanging out.
Wow.
And as his friends were at our foosball table and talking about all these different cases and such, ultimately, I got that intrigue to jump into law school, went to John Marshall, down to Springfield, and then leverage my experience in my life as a teacher. I get to be an adjunct at UIC Law, and I get to teach about legislation and process. So I pick ordinances at the municipal level, state level issues, and then Congress level issues. And we have great guest speakers, most of whom are John Marshall UIC alums, but it's great to have people involved. And that's back to my buddy Brian, and how I'm here is that he saw and regarded me, and I just appreciate that so much. Regard your peers. Find a way to give regard to people that you love and respect. And that's what I feel out of Brian and this family. You all treat me so, so well, and I appreciate being a part of it. I'm committed to getting veterans and military families the access to resources that they need. How is this not happening? That's my focus. If I'm working for anything, it's that. And you all have given me a chance to register for anybody who's listening. How are you helping folks in your local neighborhood get what they need so that they can do what they need to do? And you're in a position to help. Thank you for the show. And thank you for Cliff Kelley. He is such an important example for advocacy. Sean, you, Lori, everybody involved, Glenda, thank you, thank you, thank you.
We appreciate you. We got to take up your idea and also get some people on the show and start having these powwows and start talking about how we can get some of this information out. It's weird because when you look at military history, military is always, unfortunately for the purpose of death, use science for the edge. Because when it's a life and death situation, you don't have time to lie to yourself. You have to be honest and be truthful with yourself. So when you look at how the military was one of the first institutions in the United States to integrate, we had to be honest and say, you know what, it doesn't make sense for, to segregate and be and have race issues. We're all the same. And then we started looking at science for ways to win wars and create all these different things. The internet came out of the military. Atomic energy came out of the military. But when you look at what's going on in the world today, and particularly in our government, and even around the world in other governments, it seems like there's a pushback or some kind of disbelief or derecognition of science and what science can bring to the table.
I'll tell you, I'm reading, and I just finished The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. If folks haven't read that,
yes.
Rebecca Sloot, may Rebecca Sloot get a Congressional Medal of Everything, a world medal. Because that assemblage of such a story changed my life. I'm telling you, I just put it down maybe last week. It's a part of the Jesse Brown For Black Lives book club coming up in next week. And Wishbone and Joel and everybody who's such a part of that wonderful play is going to be a part of an important moment at Jesse Brown to change the conference room. Everything's happening. How are you involved? I think that's my legacy for people who may be now charged to say, okay, now what do I do? Go find your local post, like anything. And if you don't, reach out to folks as a part of this show, and we'll definitely refer you. We'll get you referred to people local that you can help. And now you're integrated into the advocacy community for the service members, their families, and those who have served. That's our drive. And I really appreciate the chance to be a part of this show. You all are so awesome. Thank you.
I really appreciate you and appreciate Lori. And to all of us here at America's Heroes Group, thank you for coming on our show. So we have Kevin Hall. He is the Chief Business Development Officer and Director of Chicago Association for Research and Education in Science. Also the son and grandson of a U.S. military service members. We have Miss Lori Roper. She's the supervising attorney of the state of Illinois, Circuit Court of Cook County Problem-Solving Courts. Mouthful. We thank you and happy Memorial Day.
And I want to say something real quick. I attended the funeral of a very close friend today. He was a second lieutenant in the Army. He died, unfortunately, of a massive heart attack, and he had his services today. And I would like to say rest in peace to Gerald Best. We appreciate your service to our country.
And on that note, this is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.